Pinecrest. I'm so excited to have a chance to do this morning's Bible study. Today, we are going to be talking about interrupting fear and looking at the book of Ruth. Ruth is a peaceful story that talks about loyalty and kindness. So when I received this text to talk about fear, I was a bit confused. Let's turn to Ruth chapter 1, verses 11 through 17. And so as you do that, I will give you some context. The story begins with finding out that Ruth's husband, brother-in-law, and father-in-law die, and they have to travel to Bethlehem to find food. Ruth and her sister-in-law, Oprah, follow Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, to Bethlehem, and on the way there, Naomi stops and addresses both of her daughter-in-laws. "You must go back, my daughters," Naomi answered. "Why do you want to come with me? Do you think I could have sons again for you to marry? Go back home, for I am too old to get married again. Even if I thought there was still hope and so got married tonight and had sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would this keep you from marrying someone else? No, my daughters. You know that's impossible. The Lord has turned against me, and I feel very sorry for you." Again, they started crying. Then Oprah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and went back home. But Ruth held on to her. So Naomi said, "Ruth, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her God. Go back home with her." But Ruth answered, "Don't ask me to leave you. Let me go with you. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and that is where I will be buried. May the Lord's worst punishment come upon me if I let anything but death separate me from you." What stands out about Ruth's story was her loyalty. Ruth was a Moabite, which is a type of non-Jewish person, and she was married to an Israelite. When Ruth's husband died, she was left with nothing. She was a widowed woman who couldn't provide for herself without the aid of her husband. Her only hopes for a good future was to find another husband. As a result, she was forced with two choices. She could go back home to her hometown in hopes that her family would welcome her back so that she may have another chance at finding another husband, or travel with her mother-in-law to Bethlehem, where she would face the challenges of finding a new husband as a foreigner. Obviously, this was not a choice that was made lightly, but even someone during Ruth's time would see that returning home would be a better option for a chance at a future. Her sister-in-law, Oprah, made that choice. And from an outsider's perspective, it is easy to compare Ruth to Oprah. This comparison would always lead Oprah being the bad guy. But there is no good or bad sister in this story. We see both sisters making choices when approached with fear and uncertainty. Oprah used fear as a warning bell to go back to safety, but Ruth used fear as a push to take a leap of faith. When we talk about Ruth, we look at her loyalty, and that was her leap. Her loyalty was her leap of faith. To follow God's path and to do His will isn't easy. Sometimes fear will get in the way, and honestly, that's okay, because God is with us. He is in everything that we see and works in the most unexpected and fascinating ways. Ruth took a leap of faith, and she chose to abandon a sense of security to fall in line with God. She faced hardships when she went out of her way to help her mother-in-law, and especially when she had to assimilate in her new community that views her as a foreigner, which at the time was considered to be less than a slave. So no, Ruth's journey couldn't have been easy. But Ruth and Naomi knew this from the beginning, and Ruth still decided to go with Naomi back to Bethlehem. Even in the midst of fear, Ruth was able to go to God for guidance and take the leap of faith. Due to Ruth's faith, she was rewarded. She marries Boaz, a relative of her husband, and continues the line that leads to King David and eventually Jesus. For Ruth, fear was God's call. It was a thing that steered her in the right path. When fear interrupts life, it can either warn us that we have strayed too far, or it can push us to do God's work. During this time of a global pandemic, a lot has changed. Everything that we took for granted has been turned upside down. There's so much chaos going on that we can feel as though we can't catch up. And when we finally take a break, we look around and find ourselves as foreigners in our own towns or our own homes. You try to grasp at some straw of normalcy by going out to eat and realize your favorite restaurant is closed, or realize you haven't hugged your best friend in months. There is a lot to be afraid of right now. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, uncertainty. When fear is in our bodies, it can be so hard to see God's plan for us. I mean, why would He inflict a global pandemic on our world? I asked myself this question, and for a long time, I didn't get an answer. And then one day, I got a feeling. As I saw my neighborhood change, I saw how my community would go to such lengths to help each other, and I felt warmth of those actions by my community. I saw many people reach out to acquaintances as though they were longtime friends. When I thought more about what I was seeing, I realized I'm seeing God's work. I am seeing God's work being done right in front of me. And ironically, it was contagious. I couldn't help myself from smiling and taking the steps to protect others in my community as well. Pinecrest is a community. We are the community that I was talking about. As the pandemic continued, I saw how so many of us reached out to one another. We texted one another to ask if we were okay. Some members of our community were or still are directly fighting COVID in grocery stores or in hospitals or in other places. I heard how someone went door to door and dropped off goodie bags so people wouldn't feel so lonely. There are so many more examples that I could mention. But the point is that just like Ruth, our own Pinecrest members took the leap of faith through fear and followed God. I couldn't be more proud of this community. I am proud to be a Pinecrester. We are all here because God wants us to be here and go out and lead. He wants us to do our part in other communities, not just this one. It's a pretty daunting task, but with the faith in God and all you by my side, all of us by our own sides, I'm ready to take the leap of faith.